This is a gentle practice to limber the spine. We're going to move very slowly, and I find that it's a really great sequence to get me into my body when I'm feeling very sort of in my head. So particularly good before we do any pranayama, or even sometimes before we do constructive rest, constructive relaxation. So I'll start in all fours, and if you have sensitive knees, then please put some padding underneath your knees. And you can also do this, these initial movements sitting in a chair. So if you come to sit at the edge of a chair, sort of fairly sturdy chair where your feet are on the floor, then you can move the spine in really similar ways. So if you have any wrist issues, that's an option. Okay, so come into an all fours position. Place your hands directly underneath the shoulders and your knees under the hips. So this way we have, just like a table, the most support for the body, for the upper body. And then just notice how that feels. So feel all the way along the spine, from the tailbone to the crown of the head. Sometimes we notice that the neck and shoulders feel a bit stiff, so you could initially hang the head down and release any tension. Maybe turning one ear just gently towards one shoulder and the other way. And you might even close the eyes while you're doing a lot of these movements. And then just lift the back of the head slightly and feel that you're lengthening through the sides of the neck. And now as you tuck your tail down and under, start to round your back up towards your ceiling. And allow the back of the neck to lengthen. And feel all those spaces at the back of the spine, in between the shoulder blades, the mid-back, and the lower back. And feel everything opening and stretching. And breathe into the back. Pressing the arms down reasonably firmly with straight elbows so you're feeling the support. You can also slightly lift up through the front ribs, engaging through the belly muscles. And then go the other way till your sit bones are up. Soften the belly down. Start to stretch forward through the front rib cage. Slide the shoulders down the back and feel the shoulder blades move away from the head. And lengthening through the sides of the neck. You might start to lengthen through the front of the neck, maybe even slightly stretching the chin forward. And feeling that arch in the back. Then start to breathe more fully into the front ribs. So feel the space between the lower front ribs open up. Space at the mid-chest. And up and into the collarbones. Feel those spaces. Breathing there. Good. And then take a moment either with the hips back, you can tuck the toes or untuck the toes. Or if you prefer, you can sit up on your heels. I'm just going to suggest that you come off your wrists for a few moments. So if you're bringing the hips to the heels, you can prop yourself on your elbows and start to just gently move the wrists and ease out any tension. And what we're doing here, we're being deliberately slow to cultivate a very present state of awareness. And you could start to stretch out the fingers and then curl the fingers in. Okay, and we'll come back up to all fours. So pop your hands underneath your shoulders again. And then explore those two curves as you breathe out, tucking the tail. And as you inhale, coming into the arch. And exhale round. And see if you can make the movements very slow. So, feeling that wave-like motion of the breath. Perhaps with the slow breathing, you can achieve a little bit more stretch and space and become very intimate with how those curves feel at the front and back of the spine. So you might even notice that some movements and stretches in some places seem to call for your attention. Some of the movements will be received very favourably, as if the body has been crying out for these movements. So start to really notice, particularly any pleasant sensations, any welcome sensations. And you can see we're just sort of following the breath, allowing the movement to ride on the breath. And whenever you need to, just take a pause and either bringing the hips to the heels in child's pose, or you might sit up either with the toes tucked or the toes untucked, and just move the wrists, stretch out the hands, so easing out any tension or tightness, and remembering that you could also do these movements on the seat of a chair, just like this, sitting up. The same slow, mindful presence. So come back to your all fours position, and then we'll start to add in child's pose. So as you tuck your tail around your back, bring the hips back, and then pop your forearms down, scoop the chest forward, and start to straighten the elbows, and then we'll go back. So exhaling back, and inhaling forward, making those movements pretty slow. Sometimes if my mind is very busy or agitated, I find myself resisting the slowness. So of course it's fine to speed up, but in time you might find as the body becomes the more dominant sensation, so when you start to bring your awareness down from the head, the brain, the busy thoughts, and connect into the body, you might find a sense of relief, and then the movement might ask to be slower. So it's really up to you to experiment and get to know your own state at any time. Yeah, notice how that feels, that sort of wave, really the movement transcribing a wave, and we're taking the spine through all those beautiful front and back curves. Another thing that I find is that sometimes we hold the head in a sort of fixed position. So explore just very gently bobbing and floating the head, so the neck is also participating, and see how that feels. Also, this is much more welcome because we're kind of off the wrists somewhat. And when you come back up to cat pose, then try bringing the hips out to the side and back and to the other side and forward. So we're drawing a big circle with the hips. Keep the breath flowing. One circle for one breath. And again, you can go quicker if you choose to. And then change direction and go the other way. And be curious about what's unfolding in the body. What are you noticing? Any movement that feels particularly welcome, nourishing? You can also notice how you're breathing. Are you breathing through the nose? It's always optimal to breathe through the nose. You'll find that the benefits outweigh mouth breathing. So warming the air, slowing the breath down. And then, again, perhaps just taking a moment off the wrists. And you might also take a pause to roll the shoulders. We can get so tense and tight in the shoulders. And this is no surprise, the head is heavy. And much of the time, especially in modern life, we're looking forward, either driving or staring at computer screens or on the phone. And I see many times people get stuck in a kind of a head forward position. So for that, you can bring the head back on top of the spine. Feel what the point at which, because if you can see, when we bring the head forward, the neck is working hard, the head feels really heavy. When we glide the head back, feel like you're lifting up at the back of the skull, and then suddenly the head feels weightless. It's like a float, a cork bobbing on water. So you can then play with tilting the head, or maybe turning to one shoulder and the other. Or taking one ear to one shoulder. So I always do those movements through the head and neck quite carefully. Okay, good. And then we'll come back to all fours. I just want to show you one other little movement. So this one is a bit trickier to describe, but you're going to imagine that you're sort of inside a cylindrical shape, inside a tube. So if you press your rib cage up towards the ceiling, the upper back will round, and then press the ribs out towards the side. So you're coming into more of a side bend, like a kind of a C shape through the length of the spine. Then you may want to bend your elbows as you soften the ribs down. So now we're going around the bottom of the cylinder, and then rounding and pressing the ribs to the opposite side and pressing the ribs up. So you're basically drawing a circle with the rib cage, bending or straightening the elbows to suit. And again, just changing directions whenever you feel you'd like to. If this one doesn't work, you can go back to one of the other movements. And then, so get in touch with the body and ask which way it wants to move from all of those different flavors of movement, all of those different options. Make it a little bit more free form. So just going with the flow, using your body intuition to guide you. breath flowing smoothly and evenly. You might sort of wag the tail as well, feeling the pelvis tilt one way and the other. Okay, and then we'll just take that little wrist break. I'm going to tuck my toes under this time because I love to stretch the feet. Okay, and then this can be quite difficult to do for many people, but just bring yourself off the wrists. Okay, so if we come into something that's a bit more like puppy dog pose, where the knees are under the hips, you'll walk your hands forward so we get this lovely stretch through the spine, through the waist. I'm taking my hands wider apart, and you can either have your palms on the floor or tent the fingers. You might bring your chin and chest down towards the floor. And the other thing that we can do is walk the hands more towards one side. So you're coming into more of a side bend shape. Notice how far across the arm on the, well, now on my left. So I'm stretching through my right. And always just keep that breath steadily flowing. And then coming the other way. So there's no specific place that you need to be placing the hands. So work out which position allows you to really feel into the side body. And then again coming back. And then we'll explore a twist. And this one, again, not everybody gets it or likes it, but if you thread one arm underneath, and we're trying to keep the hips above the knees and bring that shoulder towards the floor. So you might just stay hovering or slide the hand further away from you and bring the side of the head. And you can use this top hand. And then coming back. And the other way, so just threading under, side of head to floor, and feeling that twist more in the upper spine. And then untwisting. Okay, and then you can stay in cat, or perhaps a few breaths in downward facing dog. And this is how I usually instruct it, especially if you're new to downward dog. So you want to make the arms strong by spread the fingers wide, press the hands down, have the hands at least shoulder width apart. We tuck the toes. You're going to hover your knees and lift your hips back as you keep your knees bent. So then when we find that nice length through the upper body and through the spine, through the waist, you could then pedal the ankles. Notice the head and neck. Might feel good just to let the head hang. Deep breaths through the nose. Okay, and then as you're ready, bring the knees down to the floor. And either last little moment in child's pose or sitting up, that you can choose to have the knees wide or tuck the knees in. Bringing the arms to a position that helps you. You could even make a pillow using your hands. Maybe it's two fists, or maybe you actually have a cushion in front of you. And when you're ready, just roll up through the spine, just like an unfurling leaf. Okay, and then pause, notice how you feel, waking up the spine. So it's a really lovely way to guide yourself into the more introspective practices like breathing and relaxation and meditation.